Let's say we have roughly 3 continent style things. So let's use our favorite distinguishing between these things, which is cool colors. And let's put, what are we gonna do? No, I did it wrong again. Wrong again, sir. And then C could be something maybe like not like that. YouTube. The seasons have changed. It is no longer winter. It is right in the middle of spring. So let's get rid of this sweater. Love you, sweater, but you know, we may not need you for a while if all goes according to plan. So what are we going to do today? Well, we need to start doing our first little bit of world building because we need to know what languages were spoken at the same time as other languages. We have this whole big tree for sakrat. We have a few languages for the Kal family, and we need to figure out what's spoken when so we can set up some language contact situations. So that's the plan. And I think what we need to do is just push me down into the corner there. There we go. And behold, we have a new spreadsheet. This is the official world building spreadsheet. And we're only going to be able to do very basic stuff today because I am not an artist. I am a humble linguist. We do have an artist on staff. I don't know if her name rhymes with Trucy, so maybe we can convince her to help us out. But we're going to do sort of some rough outline. You know, how many continents are we talking about? How many hundreds of years are spoken, or how many hundreds of years have elapsed between one form of language and the other? This is the rough kind of thing we're going to talk about. And so I think the format for that is we have a column here called years before present, and we can just sort of go down to the bottom and say 0. And this will be the present day. And then what we'll do across the top is have different regions. So we can, well, let's talk about, we have the fragrant coast. We know at least that region exists. So we have the fragrant coast, and then we have a bunch of other regions. Region B. Nope, that's irrelevant. Yeah, I'm back on a Windows machine, which I don't think I can really get the sweet spot in terms of technical setup. Either I'm on a Mac, which I know how to use, but I'm on someone else's keyboard, or I'm in my studio and I'm using Windows, which I'm no good at. But nevertheless, we persevere. So B, C, D. Who knows what these are? We'll come up with some names for them at some point. And then, or maybe we can go with our old favorite B1, B2, B3, and then region C1. So these would be different continents. Again, with this has never been something I've wanted to do. Yeah, so as I always like to say, part of the joy of this channel, I think, is watching me struggle with interfaces. Yeah, region B is going to be so we have, let's say we have roughly 3 continent style things. We have A, we have B. We'll figure out a way of making Cortana work with one of the languages here. And we have other regions, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3. So let's use our favorite way of distinguishing between these things, which is cool colors. So we have our continent B here. And let's put, what are we going to do for B? No, I did it wrong again. Wrong again, sir. It's a bit, there we go. And then C could be something maybe like not like that. There we go. So we have 3 kind of regions, and maybe we'll put the fragrant coast in A as well. So we could call these continents or what have you. And essentially what we're going to have is something like 100, 200, 300. I don't know if Google Sheets is going to let me fill this up. Yeah, that sort of worked. Sort of. I had one too many selected. Look at that. That's called technology. That's called innovation right there. Okay, we probably don't need fully 4500, but there we have it. Okay, so this is our palette right now. I'm hearing a request for green. All right, well, you know what we do if we need green? We need a green continent. It's a bit too subtle. Okay, so we know that on the fragrant coast in column A, or in continent A, Eustamia call is going to be spoken. And it's going to be spoken at some point. I haven't really thought of whether it's going to be contemporary from the point of view of this world building project. Obviously, there isn't really a present in the world building project, but there's, I guess, a point up to which you've written, and that could be thought of as the present. So why don't we say that Eustamia call is spoken 1,000 years before this arbitrary point, this zero date. And this will be a start. All right. So we also have Lenadilef. And of course, we don't know anything else about this A continent other than Eustamia is in it. Now, given that the call languages are kind of related, they should probably, I don't know. It makes sense that they would be spoken on the same continent unless something has happened to some sort of migration. So we could put Lenadilef in this mysterious region here, and we could make it contemporary or maybe slightly later than Eustamia. And of course, the language is not just spoken. Well, language isn't static, but we can talk about rough periods that are going to make historians have something to write about. So maybe the Eustamia period is like this, and the Lenadilef period is more like this, like a 500-year or so period. And so these two could come into contact. Maybe Eustamia branches off into some other languages. All right. Gonna catch up on the chat now. Quain, yeah. I think we're on the same page with this. Eustamia does feel a little bit older or more conservative than Lenadilef is, for sure. Elijah, the scale, I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do about the scale. So we can think of these little areas as like nodes or something, and we don't even know which is close to which other one, other than that the continents are somewhat connected. But maybe A is close to C3. We can be totally agnostic about that, and we could just sort of make it work how we want. Yeah, so we could interpret them as some subcontinents. We could interpret them as one as an archipelago, which I think we want to do for the Sakrat languages at least. So Lenadilef, we were going to want to be, since that was our idea for one of the languages to come into contact, we want this region to be accessible to another region where we can get some of these Sakrat languages coming in. So I guess we should decide then where we want the Sakrat languages to. Oh, no. Let's stick with call for now. And let's see, maybe we could talk about protocol as being reconstructed roughly 2,000 years before the present. And we could put this in bold. And this is, of course, a proto-language, whereas Eustamia and Lenadilef are attested languages. And this is the period during which we have texts, I guess. I'm just arbitrarily asserting that these are written languages, but I think that's fine. And then I'm putting the protocol homeland in this question mark region. You can call it region A1, just because we don't have any other places for it. And I think I'd rather not have it in the Fragrant Coast, because we're naming this language after the Fragrant Coast. And I don't know, that's not a very convincing argument, but nevertheless, just an instinct. So the sakrat are have their origins at least in sailing cultures, so they can go where they like as long as there's a coast. So let's figure out where our sakrat speakers are going to come from. I think it would be cool. Let's take a look at where's sakrat. Here it is. So let's bring this over just a bit, and let's look at our comparative lexicon here. So we have three main branches of sakrat. Sakrat A, which is very conservative, and we haven't really played with too much yet, other than to mess around with some affix, to turn our formerly analytic language into something that's starting to look a little more synthetic. So that's going to happen. Where were we? So that's the A branch. Then we have the B branch, which undergoes all this tonogenesis in different branches, reduces vowels, has all sorts of stuff happen to it. This is going to be one that I'd like to see spread out over lots of different islands. And then we have the C branch, which kind of takes a different route, and it doesn't undergo tonogenesis in any of its, we only really have one language that we've fleshed out for the C branch. But, what was I saying? Yeah, so this one is going to be the language that comes into contact with Lenathailif. So maybe that's a starting point. So let's bring this back over here. And we can say that maybe towards the end of this period, we have Kranslor in this region, maybe 200 years of contact here. And then maybe something happens, which we'll get into later. So then where did Kranslor come from? I think we could, for the sake of keeping our minds, of making this easy for us to understand, we can maybe say it comes from this B region. So we have Kranslor being spoken here in Cortana. And unless, hey, Quinn just had a good idea. Why don't we have this be kind of circular? So to keep things in our minds, let's assume that anything that is adjacent is kind of touching. So adjacent to the spreadsheet, including A1 and D, are able to influence each other. There is, we're going to have to do more than that, but this is a good starting point. So Kranslor, and we'll just have this exist here. And that's kind of cool. So then what else do we have? So we have Proto-C, the Sakrat C branch. So I'm thinking that might have to be reconstructed to here. Proto-Sakrat C. Get us a little more space here. And for some reason it doesn't scroll the chat for me. Question about the climate of the Fragrant Coast. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it all depends on what we want this coast to be fragrant with. It's a question that I've left unanswered thus far. Let's ponder. I don't have strong opinions, and we also have to get into all the good stuff of like tectonic plates and prevailing winds and climate zones and all of these kinds of things that I know a lot less about. So I kind of want to leave us some wiggle room for now, in case we want to put the Fragrant Coast somewhere that has a climate that we hadn't thought. before. All right, let's scroll down a bit. Satan, welcome back from the dentist. Yeah, Kranslor seems like it should be separate from the other Sakrat languages. So maybe we have a situation where we have one, an island in which Proto-Sakrat was spoken, and then one migration off in one direction, which gives us the Sakrat C languages, and one migration off in another direction, which gives us the Sakrat B languages, and then the A stay put. Maybe something like that. Actually, that sounds kind of cool, but we shouldn't call these B, D if we're having Sakrat C here. This is just going to get confusing. So let's just say green, the green region, purple 1, purple 2, purple 3, and blue 2, blue 3. And Cortana is in blue. Great, okay. So we're only using letters for one thing at a time. I think that's a mercy. So in this green region, this is where we get Kranslor and Proto-Sakrat C. Maybe there are other Sakrat C languages, which we can make on another occasion. So Proto-Sakrat C. Then we need a spot for Proto-Sakrat B. And I'd like a little bit more time depth for this one. Or maybe, actually, I think maybe we should push this back a bit. So I'd like some more. Okay, so 1500. Then we want Sakrat B. I think we should have Sakrat B break off a bit before, maybe around here. So this is our proto-language. And maybe we could have Sakrat B, say we have a migration into this purple region. That's the Sakrat B speakers. And then it just diversifies from there. And then we could have Sakrat A somewhere in this blue region. So we have something like something a bit later for Proto-Sakrat A. And then Proto-Sakrat itself could be something around here. And so this could be the way that it happened. All right. So we were getting some theories about the fragrant coast. We want something nice smelling. Quain's, so Elijah says nice why do I keep saying spelling? Nice smelling. Quain says temperate 4 seasons, and then the fragrance comes from the flowers. Moon Truth is saying not a sulfury coast. Yeah, so Ship's saying something like more like a Mediterranean situation. And the strong winds from the sea, this is Moon Truther again, making the air smell salty. All right. So, okay, so then Sakrat, yes, Sakrat seems more tropical. We have a proto form for coconut. So we know that wherever Proto-Sakrat is spoken, there have to be coconuts there. And let's populate some of our descendant languages as well. So we have Proto-Sakrat B. Then we have Proto-Mnis Hlasiut, which is the ancestor of both of our tonal languages that we made a few weeks ago. And where does that go? Somewhere in here. So Proto-B breaks off into Proto-Mnis Hlasiut and Proto-B2. So I think what we'll do is we'll have Proto-Mnis Hlasiut stay in purple 1 and Proto-B2 can originate somewhere off in purple 3. So I'll just put these roughly at the same time depth, but we may want to change that. And then Proto-Mnis Hlasiut will break off into Proto-Mnis sometime later, maybe around here. Do that. And then Proto-Hlasiut, which, for the sake of being simple, let's just put them at roughly the same time depth for now. See if I can optimize the width of these things so we can see more. And then we have the actual languages. Let's put it in roughly 500 years. Okay, that didn't work. I just want to copy the text, please. Good. There we go. That's what you love to see. Going down all the way into the present. And sasiut also around the same values only, please. All right. Okay. Yeah, so the languages in which tone starts to develop are they're often their own little area. And what we might do is have another language family that we develop that lives there that also has tone, and the whole thing becomes like an aerial situation. All right, let's catch up on the chat. Yes, Me has such a beautiful tradition of poetry, expressing some of the most profound sentiments known to humankind. So it's truly something to behold. So what we may do then is have our Creole spoken in this same region. So maybe Kranslor ceases to be spoken. Lenadilef continues. But then we also have this situation. So then in the present day, we have, whether we want Kranslor to continue or to branch off into something else, I don't know. Let's say it doesn't continue to the present in that form. It may need some further development, but we at least have Lenadilef, Me, Sasiut, and this Creole as languages that are all spoken contemporaneously at this sort of year zero present. Gotta hydrate. Oh, and stretch. Just sort of right over there. There we go. Definitely needed stretching. All right. Yeah, we're going to have a continuum. We're going to have a Lenadilef and Creole continuum. And then the question is, what are we going to do with Eustamia? And I'm kind of thinking maybe it could come to be a kind of literary language. And so we could have this interesting situation where you have Eustamia loans into Lenadilef. That could be kind of cool. But it itself is no longer spoken as a living language. Maybe it has some descendants, which we could have fun developing. So at present we have 1, 2, 3. We should talk about sakrat A then, because we have worked on that a bit. So sakrat A could be, well, we don't really have a descendant language for it, so we'll leave it. What else have we worked on? What else do we have to bring in? Oh yeah, Pquak. So Pquak needs a spot. So we have Proto B2 here. Then we have so Proto B2. These are just essentially different stages of the language. Proto B2A. Let's just give it a few hundred years between each of these. B2A1. And then we have Pquak as a spoken language. Clearly the best language. Okay. All right. This is cool. Okay. I'm going to stay on my feet here and I'll catch up on the chat. Ka is saying, I can imagine a huge continent in the northwest region, and in the southeast region of the continent, there's a sort of an archipelago, and then towards the center, some islands and one big island in the southeast region. Okay, I'm gonna take a little screenshot of that comment there. There we go. Because we're gonna put it on our mood board. So all these suggestions, we're gonna put on a sort of a mood board, and then Lucy and I are gonna talk, and we're gonna see how we can make it happen. Yeah. Elijah, we could make a writing system adapted for Eustamia and then use it for Lenadilef as well. It's not that blue isn't populated anymore. It's just that we haven't really developed the A branch. So we can imagine, sakrat A languages of some kind. And we don't really know much about this, these blue 2 and blue 3 yet. So maybe there is some other stuff going on there. Another family, perhaps. Yeah. So we've got now history stretching back to our earliest proto-language is Proto-Sakrat, and it is spoken roughly 2,300 years before the present. So that's a decent span of history. We could probably do more, but we don't have any more fully developed languages to place in it unless we go take a look at the call languages. So we do have, I don't know if you remember this is a long time ago, but as we were working on Eustamia and the language that became Lenadilov, which you may recall as Lang 3b, we also have Lang 2a. See, I have this fixation with these names, these horrible names, 2a, 1a, 3b. But we have a sort of a sister language to Lenadilov, Lang 3a. So you could see some forms here. Instead of Avidoch, which is what happened with Lenadilov, it's Aidov. Instead of Haroil, it's Abel. So it's a language we haven't talked about really in quite a while. But maybe it needs to be placed somewhere around here. So let's add another column, and let's put this proto-language, protocol, everyone likes saying protocol, protocol 3, and then this is Lang 3a is spoken here. Or maybe it's comes in around here, and that could be spoken to the present day. Something like this. And we also have the 2 branch, which has forms like Swame and Ponaedu, Ogamne. Yeah, these are kind of cool. So let's put them in. There's also call 2, which will need, well, why don't we do this? Let's put this region over here and then call this blue 1. And we can have protocol 2 hang out in this blue continent. BP means before present. So we're just counting backwards from some 0 date, which we're calling the present for the purposes of this project. Alrighty. So let's just catch up on the chat, and then we'll put in a little break because the good people of YouTube are going to want to get up and fetch a drink or something. So, yeah, the question of time depth and the amount of divergence and the amount of linguistic change that's gone on, a very difficult thing to quantify or make theories about. There have been attempts, but they're not universally accepted that it's not universally accepted that there's a way of determining from the development of or from inspecting cognate sets that you can determine the time depth at which the proto-language occurred. And we all know cases where a language stays very well, at least a subset system of language, like the phonology or even the vowel system, stays static for 1,000 years and then abruptly changes in 100. English, the history of English and the English vowel system comes to mind when talking about that. Or if we look in the history of French, we see enormous phonological changes in just a few hundred years, and then that rate of change seems to slow down. And so it's dependent on all sorts of factors, hard to make generalizations. So what that means is we're free to do what we want, more or less, which is great. Okay, I'm going to put in a cut here. I'm going to bid farewell for now to YouTube. Thanks for joining us. We're doing something a little bit different here, making up history. So come back, join us. We'll keep going. Until next time.